is what the aftermath of FML looks like.
Where's the easy button?
Today's episode of In the Cave with Valley Rally Enduro is brought to you by Beta Canada, our #1 choice when it comes to riding the best enduro bikes on the market today. Go to betacanada.net or your local Beta dealer to check out the latest 2022 models. Ride, race, live, Beta. It's all good in the woods. This episode is also brought to you by Quad Expert, your one-stop power sports dealer in Eastern Ontario, specializing in sales and service of Beta, Sherco, Husqvarna, and are also a 5-star Yamaha dealer. And their service and dedication in providing for their clients' motorsports needs is priority #1. This episode is also brought to you by Lang's Off-Road. If you are at all into enduro or trials riding here in Ontario, then you are no doubt familiar with Lang's Off-Road. They are one of, if not the only, dedicated enduro and trial shop in the province, and they know their stuff. If you are in the Southern Ontario region and are an enduro or trials enthusiast like us, then you would be doing yourself a disservice by not checking out Lang's Off-Road for your moto needs. So, thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This is pretty awesome. We've been looking forward to this for a really long time. You guys... Well, I don't know. I think most of our listeners probably know who you are, but for those who don't, maybe give them a little background on who Sean Robichaud and Rob Girouard are.
I think based on YouTube subscribers, Sean should go first.
Well, I'm best known as Billy Bolt's stunt double.
Nice.
I have a channel called Big Iron Moto, and there's a bunch of stuff that happens on there, capturing all races, injuries, things that happen on the trail, adventures, a lot of broken bikes, a lot of broken dreams. But yeah, check it out, Big Iron Moto on YouTube. And Rob's been on there many times, and so have you guys who've been up here many times over. And a lot of our best footage has been memorialized here.
That's right. Yeah, we do have our wall of fame or shame, depending on your point of view. You'll be seeing that over my left shoulder for those watching the video. And Rob, what about you? What do you got going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a couple of years, I guess. We'll probably get there. So, I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes right now. But started riding a few years ago and decided I wanted to start capturing, video, but wasn't really sure what to do with it because video is boring when it's just you riding and it's unedited. And you end up with hours of video, and even your kids don't want to watch it because it is so boring, right? So I started playing around with the program. I wanted to throw it on there. I think at the time, my first YouTube channel was called Canadian 4-Stroke Enduro or something like that. It was
really short and simple.
Yeah, it was like short and simple, and it was. I think I used the cheapest, video editing software that was available. Whatever came on Windows.
And you had a very, very old GoPro, I remember.
Yeah, it was a very old GoPro. And it just morphed. And I think, what was it? Was it last summer? Or no, it wasn't last summer. It was last winter, riding snow bikes with you guys. I got my 300 and changed it up. So now it's Moto Valley Enduro. Sounds similar to Valley Rally Enduro. We love it. It's probably worked for branding on both sides because I always get asked, hey, you're with those Barry's Bay guys? And I just say, yep, absolutely. So, but it's been a lot of fun. And, Big Iron Moto, started following him, connected for a few rides this year. And,
we started off the season together. We started off with the first legal ride of the year up in Kawartha.
We did, yeah.
Well, and that's kind of why we wanted to get you guys on, because you guys had a really big season this year, and you pretty much did almost every OO or FMSQ event on the calendar, and you did them together, I think, save for maybe one or two, which has been pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, I mean, you guys probably have some pretty epic tales from those races.
and I'm, that's why you're here, man. We want to hear about it.
Actually, I would argue if it wasn't for Sean, I wouldn't have done all of those races. I mean, I was pulling into your place sometimes after midnight.
Yeah.
Them rolling out the red carpet for me so I could go, because all those XC races are, they're 6.5, close to 7 hours south of where we are up here. So, that's not a thing where you take off in the morning, go race and drive home. So I was heading down to Sean's place the night before. It was, and we had met Kawartha Lakes. We did, opened up the season. But you didn't really know me from a hole in the wall, and he's inviting me into his house. So it was super cool.
Yeah, exclusive access to the Big Iron Moto Airbnb.
Exclusive access,
He's the only guy that my dog likes.
That's
too,
right.
so.
Ernie and I are best friends. Yeah.
Well, do you sleep together? Is it in the same
No,
bed?
he gets too excited when I'm there, so he wouldn't fall asleep if he was downstairs with me. He just barks at me from upstairs all night.
Well, that's what the community's about, and that's kind of that touches on one of the reasons why we started this podcast, is because we do the events and we go to the events and we see everybody. And we kind of know each other by face and name or bike. And I don't know, like I thought this was a good way to kind of bring it together all in one spot. And that's awesome. I love that story. Like you guys didn't really know each other, and now like you guys are thick as thieves, man. It's wicked.
For sure. So I don't know where to even begin. Like, was this your first year riding, Rob?
It wasn't my
racing, I should say.
First year racing, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually have a funny story about that, because you'll remember my first YouTube video from the first race in Walton. One of the comments, there was a guy posted a comment. It was only on for about an hour, but it was like, "Oh, sandbagging and novice." And I remember waking up to the comment in the morning and just kind of laughing to myself, because like there was no sandbagging and novice. I'd never raced a dirt bike before in my life. And I headed down, and Sean showed me the ropes at that first race, and I was hooked. But yeah, that's where it started. Never raced a dirt bike before this year.
Yeah, I'm an enabler of racing. I get people hooked real quick, and then the prices of the Big Iron Moto Airbnb go up real fast.
Get them started?
That's right. That's $500 a night.
Mac and cheese the night before every time. Yeah.
So maybe let's list off all the events you guys did, so people have an idea of what we're talking about.
That's a lot. So okay, this year. Okay, actually started in Quebec this year, because the first race was actually a studded sprint enduro at Cheneyland, FMSQ. And you guys know Andrew and his buddy Jamie. They were going out there, and I thought that's so cool. So my bike was already studded. I went out there. It's I think it's close to Victoriaville. I spent the night there, and I did a video on that. And I hope it happens again this year. So that's how the race season started for me. And then it was kind of a weird year, because we didn't really know what was going on because of COVID, right? Like
everything was last minute.
Yeah, it was kind of a late announcement, and you're kind of like, you're trying to plan, but at the same time, you don't really know where these races are going to be placed, and you kind of have a sense because what happened in previous years. But it was often like a few weeks prior, and you're like, oh my God, there's a race in a couple of weeks, and trying to make that happen. But trying to list them all. Catch me if I miss some, Rob. But I think we started off at, I can't remember if it was Gopher Dunes.
No, it was Walton XC was the very first one.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
Walton XC was the first one, and then was it Gopher Dunes after that?
I think so. I feel like it was track. It was almost only.
No, it was track, and then it was Chloe's Kingdom doubleheader, because it was only because I was 4 races in, and we didn't know if the 5th race was going to happen, and the 5th one was Gullymore.
That's right. Yeah, Gullymore.
Yeah,
and was that the last one?
For the Ontario off-road for the XC series, it was those. Yeah, it was those ones.
Yeah, so to break that down a little bit for people who don't race, because I assume a lot of your listeners don't necessarily race, like Offroad Ontario is kind of the big race scene for off-road riders in Ontario, and they kind of do the points for both an XC series and the Enduro series. And for those of you who don't know what that means, XCs are either 2 or 3 hours, depending on the class that you're racing in, where you just do as many laps as you can, and it's usually around 10, 12K. And so those are often like fast enduro races. They're often meant to be faster rather than more challenging. And the enduro races, on the other hand, which OO also oversees, you kind of have your test sections, which they can be really hard or they can be fast. It really varies. And you'll go from test section to test section, typically with a transit. And then sometimes there's like a hybrid of the two, like called sprint enduros, where you kind of just start at a central spot and either go to different areas and do a couple laps on each test section, but you're not really doing transits. But they usually classify that under the enduro. And then within OO, so there's two classes. There's the XC class, or series, I should say, and then there's the enduro series. And then the cumulative points of each one you place, like whether you're first, second, third for the XC and then for the enduro. But this year, because there were so few enduro events, really the only one was the Cord, they didn't keep track of the points for the enduro. So there was just the XC overall points. And then so layered on top of that, Rob and I went to a few other races.
Yeah, some good ones. So we have a WhatsApp group. I'm privileged to be part of it. Sean invited me onto the WhatsApp group, and it's full of I call them assassins. You know what I mean? Like it's guys who love to ride and kill it every single time. Not unlike Valley Rally Enduro and everything you guys are doing here, but it's just I am surrounded by people who love to ride, push me, let me push them, and I mean that's kind of where it started. But Sean's the instigator every time, like without fail. And he posts one day Battle of the Prospectors, and we looked it up, and it's in Gaspé. It's like a 13-hour drive. It's in the mountains, off the St. Lawrence, and it is. And it was on my birthday weekend, and it was on the long weekend before school. Like school started for the kids.
Yeah, none of
September.
It made sense. It was all crazy. The race didn't make sense. Where we stayed makes sense. What we had for breakfast didn't make sense.
It really didn't.
The drive.
It's all crazy.
Yeah. And not unlike what you're doing right now for next year. Sean's just, I've already booked an Airbnb. Whoever wants in, you're in. So it's like, you're racing to give them your $25. But anyways, for Battle of the Prospectors, I just jumped on, the train that was heading out there, I guess. And I mean, that one was super, super interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so then Battle of Prospectors, Corduroy.
The Cord.
And I can't remember if there were any other races. We did the Rockhound, which wasn't a race, but...
And we did the
6 hour.
The 6 hour.
Yeah, and we did the Kraken.
And the Kraken, which wasn't a race.
Which was awesome.
The 6 hour was quite a race. You didn't do that, though, did you?
The 6 hour I didn't. No.
But that
and some of the guys did Terra Nova as well. We didn't do.
That's right. I
didn't do Terra Nova this year.
That was part of the enduro series. But again, I guess there weren't enough to collect.
Yeah,
points.
It didn't seem like they collected points.
But it was all awesome, and like I'd love to talk about any particular race, but I mean that's kind of the big picture from Forest from the Trees of what happened this year.
Yeah, and then you did the the studded one you talked about, FMSQ, early in the year, and then I did Narden.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Which was just a couple of weeks ago, which was awesome.
And I also did 2 other FMSQ events.
That's right.
Beyond that were very different. Like you'd think they're the same, but it's a very different vibe at an FMSQ, and so.
That's actually a good question. So, in your experience, what if someone is curious about the differences between how OO would do an event versus FMSQ? Are there some tangible differences between the two organizations and how they put on a race, or is it just kind of like it's just the flavor is different? It's kind of like in the air.
A bit of both. Like with FMSQ, I don't know if it's because more people are into riding in Quebec, but what FMSQ does is a bit more money to join as a member at the beginning of the year, and it seems like they have a lot more people who do sign up initially, and with that. They seem to have, and I should also say they also add in quads, and they also add in electric bikes, e-bikes. And I think because there's so many different things going on in a weekend, like you race on the Sunday, the quads are on Saturday, I can't remember when the e-bikes are. But when you show up at these things, they're like GNCC events. There's like 1,000 people there. It's huge, like parking, like the one that I did in Saint Michel. I can't remember what the whole name of it, but that one was on an airway. It's at an airport, and there was like a runway right in the middle of it all, a dirt runway, and it was just cars and campers all the way you could see, and there easily was 1,000 people there. So, and especially if you race in this year for the first time, I was racing in the afternoon class. So the pros go out first, and then we have experts, and then old experts like myself at experts. Old, yeah. And so, but when you're doing that, like it was really surreal because, you know, like there's like 150 people or more, maybe even like 200-300 people all at the start just cheering you on. And so it really felt cool. And then within the FMSQ, which is a little bit different than OO, like all throughout the whole race, there's people standing and cheering. And so you really got that sense of like, this is really important to these people. Not to like minimize OO at all. Like OO is awesome. It's just on a smaller scale. And I think it could get to the FMSQ if they wanted to, but I think part of the problem with the OO is the venues that you would be required to run an FMSQ event may not be here in Ontario, because these things are, you know, to get 1,000 people parked and whatever, that would be pretty tough.
That's interesting. I've only ever been to, like, as a competitor, I've only ever been to one OO event, and that's Chloe's Kingdom. And I don't recall there being any spectators there. So out of the OO events, like, were there spectators at a lot of those things, or not so much?
Yeah, I mean the nice thing about the XCs is because they're, you know, a large portion of each lap is on an MX track and you can see so much of it. I find there's a big family atmosphere at the XCs. I think they're not attracting the same types of audience that FMSQ is at most of their, and you can see that. You watch the videos and like Sean is saying, I've always found that. I mean, it is, you know, people cheering every single person going on. It's almost hard for the people videoing because there's always people in the way, and there's probably less of an audience numbers wise. But no, the XCs had good turnouts. I think Chloe's had a good turnout too. When you came around at the, you know, through kind of the start finish area, there was always people there, and the Cord, there's people in the woods all over the place.
Oh yeah, Cord's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of its own thing.
Yeah,
but
Narden, you know, there was people kind of hidden in the woods. Not a whole lot. But,
Yeah, your son.
My son was there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
taking
grabbing some video, watching people loop bikes out.
Good for him.
Yeah, that's my perspective. Is you know, I thought the XCs for sure down south. I say southern Ontario, basically. From my perspective, wasn't too bad.
yeah, no, like especially in the tracks like you're saying, Gopher Dunes, Walton. What was the other track?
Gullymore.
Gullymore. Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, all those. Yeah, there was definitely a sense of like getting cheered on, and it was fun that way.
But I mean, the places weren't. Well, Walton was a big deal, but I think the reason Walton was a big deal is because they slapped the XC race in the middle of like their first opening national weekend.
Yeah, it was a Triple Crown series.
Triple
that
Crown
followed
series,
us,
it
and
was-
that was pretty cool.
I
Actually,
mean, they had
liked
team
how-
trailers there. It was yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, man.
Yeah, nice. Any one of them your favorite that you can speak of?
I think, you know, I guess the Cord for me. It's just really hard to top that race because there's so much history, and I just love the race. Like you get up on that podium block to start a race, and you know what lies ahead of you, and there's so many competitors there, and seeing that the compound, the impound, I should say, where all those bikes are in the morning, like
It's amazing.
It really is. Like it's you can't really replicate that with anything. But I would say like that's probably my favorite if you were to ask me. But I have to say like the Battle of the Prospectors was like nothing I've ever raced before, and we kept saying like, oh, this is what a hard enduro is, because it was nuts.
Yeah.
Like you really start to. I remember at one point thinking to myself, I don't think I like dirt biking anymore. Like I'm done with this sport, and like that's how hard it was. Where I'm like, this is stupid. I don't know why I even do this. This is ridiculous.
Was that before or after you made your way back to the truck, controlling your throttle with your thumb?
No, that was on I think my second lap on the. I was just
Starting
coming
line.
down.
Yeah.
Because it was relentless. It
Oh, it
kept
was.
beating. And you just wanted to stop, and it didn't. But you know, in retrospect, we all forget the pain of these things, right?
And we'll do it again, probably.
Oh man, we've already
We
booked
booked our Airbnb.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk more about that event, maybe.
Yeah,
like
sure.
let's get into that one. From everything you posted on social media, it looked amazing.
Well,
It
you know what?
really did.
Battle of the Prospectors, from a social media, not that I have blown up, I am far from it, but I would say that, you know, I had a goal this year from a YouTube channel, so on and so forth, and it was Battle of the Prospectors that like, because now I have a bunch of riders in an entire different demographic now that are following me from Quebec. there was riders there from Nova Scotia, from New Brunswick,
Rob, it's because
from Ontario.
You have a French last name.
Also, yeah. And I couldn't speak a word of French on my channel, so they might be disappointed. But yeah, Battle of the Prospectors was, we all made our way there. You were with Chris, but Tony and I made our way individually there. And, I slept in a truck stop on the way there and on the way back in the front seat of my truck.
Nice.
Sean checked himself into like a Fairmont or something like that the first night.
Just on the way. It was all truck stops on the way back.
Yeah. So
broken.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We made our way there, but I found the last, the whole experience, because this is part of the experience. It was the race, but it was the experience, The last 3 hours of that drive are just unbelievable. Like unbelievable. 100-foot rock cliffs on the one side, and then just water, the St. Lawrence on the left side. And I mean, on the way there, because of the weather, the swells were coming up over the highway. And I mean, it was nuts. I actually ended up pulling over a bunch of times because I just had to take it in.
Yeah, didn't you guys take a bunch of video? Like right as you were getting close, and you're like, check it out, it's crazy.
Yeah, there was
waves coming up,
waterfalls coming out of the rock faces.
Yeah, the closest terrain I've ever seen like that is like when I took a helicopter ride once through Hawaii, and it looks like that, except not tropical. Like there's just crazy mountains and waterfalls coming down them, and you're just thinking, where are we and how are we riding this?
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, you're definitely riding this. And then you just go up this ski hill and it doesn't stop. So one lap I think on the second day was a 5,000 feet elevation plus minus. That's how much you're doing in one lap up and down. Wow. So to give you a perspective, Whistler, I don't even think it's 5,000. So you're basically going up and down half of Whistler in one lap. And people were pulling in 5-6 laps. So Battle of Prospectors for me, like Rob's saying, the experience of it all was so unique. And what was also really eye-opening to me is how hard a race can actually be. And with that, you start to realize other management skills. Like I definitely look at races differently now after doing Battle of the Prospectors in different ways, like how to deal with bottlenecks, how aggressive to be, how where to push it, where not to, and that I learned a lot from that. I'm looking forward to next year because I think, you always think this, but I think next year it'll be a lot better to have that wisdom going in.
Well, and you know what you're aiming for. You know what you're going. Like, I'm sure they'll change it up, but what the terrain looks like. So is it, if I'm not mistaken, an old ski hill, or it's a ski hill, or what is it that you guys are, the course is on?
I think it's an active ski hill still.
Yeah. It's called Chick-Chack.
Yeah,
Chick-Chack.
Yeah.
Sure, I know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, when you think about that out loud, it's a ski hill that let dirt bikers rip up and down it all summer.
Only in Quebec.
It's amazing.
Only in Quebec.
I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, that's what you had, right? You had the ski runs, which are wide open. Mm-hmm. But like every other ski hill, in between those wide open ski runs is the wooded portions.
Right.
And that's where they decided to make, the Python and everything, Zigzag and whatever the other, names that I tried to forget because they were causing me nightmares. But
and these are serious. Like, when we in Ontario, we think ski hill, we think, what's around here. But this is more like if you decide to run a race up and down Tremblant, up through the woods, not up the main part. Like that's kind of what it's like. Like it's crazy. Like if you were skiing down it, you'd think, oh, I did this double black diamond through the glades. And then you're like,
riding your dirt
in the
bike
summer, I have to ride up these glades with 40 other guys who are dropping bikes on me.
I mean, and like every other race this year, the cord was the same. I don't know what it was about Mother Nature, but Mother Nature decided to make every race that much more difficult. I mean, it was the same thing. They had 100 millimeters of rain or something in the days leading up to it. It rained. We were soaked the first day, which was I guess it was considered the qualifier. So, you had the people who designed the race, and Sean knows more of them on a first-name basis than I do, but they were admittedly saying, we didn't intend this to even be this hard, but with the wet and everything, it just, some of those bottlenecks in very specific sections were crazy.
Yeah, we were watching, and it looked brutal. Like all the stuff coming out, I was like, "Ugh, I'm really happy I'm not doing the Cord this year."
But those races like Battle of Prospectors and the Cord, the reason they're so, I guess, special and why I like them so much is it really makes you realize what kind of person you are and how hard you're willing to dig and do things, right? Like if you're the type of person who will not give up, if you're the kind of person who just forgets about pain or pushes through it, you can win these races or perform extremely well. And I like that. Like anyone can kind of finish most races, but things like the Cord and the Battle of the Prospectors, no. And from what I hear, Arden too, it's not the kind of thing where you can just sneak line around things. Like it really takes a lot out of you, and even more if you want to perform well. And I'd like to see how far I can push myself without quitting.
I think that's part of who we all are, is it not? Like for me, it's putting yourself out there, not the normal, and seeing, can I get through here? And some of the lines that we cut off the property, that's what it is. We're like, can we make it? And we'll session some of those sections. We were talking about that earlier. That's what it's all about. You're right. Like if you can, I haven't done any races yet, but plan on in the future. But to test yourself and say, okay, I made that. That is a pretty neat thing for sure.
Yeah,
So.
Especially when you don't get it right away. Like when you eventually get, like your hill here, FML is gnarly.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how many times I tried before eventually I got it. And when you get it after doing something like that and sessioning for a good hour and breaking half your bike, and eventually you get to the top and your bike's steaming and
Your head's
steam
steaming.
coming out of your head and you're thinking like that, there's no feeling that beats that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that that sense of pushing beyond limits and boundaries. That's one of the things that I really like about what we do and the style of riding that we have. I gravitate naturally to that hard enduro kind of side of things because I just think it's the pinnacle as far as, pushing yourself mentally and physically, and not just for yourself, but also for your bike, right? Like you look at the pros and they might have a dented pipe at the end of the day, but they need to take care of their bike. And it's something I'm not very good at.
Terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
Terrible.
But I'm working on it.
Look at Narden. You guys were there. I think all of us finished, but out of it was somewhere between 22, 24,
Yeah,
25
22
in
people or
silver. 9 of us finished the 3 laps.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from the individuals who didn't finish the 3 laps, but that's.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're chasing, right?
Yeah,
right. That's what we're all chasing.
Yeah.
Well, and
is
that's
that challenge.
And that's a great point. So before we started the podcast, we were talking with Sean about that, kind of giving him a brief on what went down at Narden. And I was saying to him, like, at one point, I'd kind of broken away from the pack, and I was just kind of riding my own race. And I we didn't go there to compete. We ended up helping a lot of people, which is awesome. We like doing that sort of thing. But we were there to kind of suss it out and see what it was about. But as I was riding through, I'm like, well, maybe I'll push it a little bit and see what happens. And, first lap, great. Quarter way through the second lap, I bonked and forgot how to ride my motorcycle for a little bit and, rehydrated. And then I got back in the game. And the third lap was really great. Had an awesome time. And, man, like I pushed through and I figured, oh, okay, like I'm probably down at the bottom of the pack somewhere. But then they're like, yeah, well, like 9 guys finished. I'm like, oh, okay. And it just kind of goes to show that just don't stop. Yeah. You might be going slow, but maybe you're going faster than half the pack. And maybe you'll finish, whereas half the pack won't.
And, that's a really good point because what happens is, when I try and lure people into racing,
it works.
Everyone's probably watched too many of my videos of my bike backflipping and cracking whatever. But the reality of racing, though, is that it's just a great time. And whether you go there with the mentality of like, I'm just curious and I'm curious if I can even do a lap, or you go there with the mentality of like, I've trained for this, I want to win, you're still going to have a great time. And people, when they, like every person that, I've seen over the years or come into racing, they're extremely nervous at first. They're nervous about people behind them, about being too slow, about their bike braking, about this and that and that. They can't get over logs. But no one at the end of a race said that they regretted it. They always say, I loved it, and I can't believe I beat somebody. I can't believe that I finished a lap. I can't believe because you're always going to accomplish more than what you think you're capable of in racing. And that's why people keep coming back, because they're like, because next time.
Yeah.
And to Rob, now he's podium. He's like, that's not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Going for first.
Yeah. But the other thing I found about racing, I don't know if this is a shared experience across everybody who has tried it, but it made me a better rider, but not for the reasons you think it would. I don't think, anyway. That's my opinion. But when I say it made me a better rider, it took the thought process out of riding, because you're in a race. You don't have time to think about, am I going to try that hill? It's like, no, you're in a race.
You're in it. Do it.
You know, like you are, I would argue 80% of my time racing this entire year was spent like on the limit of my riding ability. I was not in a comfortable zone for a lot of it. Now, I wasn't dangerous.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite there, but I was definitely, you use the tachometer methodology or whatever to explain, that it was pinging.
Yep.
The needle's pinging. But all of a sudden you're like, all of a sudden the log is just something in your way to pass somebody.
Yep.
It's not an obstacle that you're out practicing on.
Yep.
It's like, I'm going to make it over that log. It might be clean. It might be super dirty, but like the log is not stopping me from getting this position. And it really did, what I learned through racing was, momentum. Now when I'm on a trail, if I actually, this sounds silly and it's not to brag. I mean, I'm still a novice intermediate rider, but if I'm going too slow on a trail now, if I'm out for a leisure ride, I feel like I don't have the balance.
Yeah.
No,
it's really weird.
Agree,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So would you, like, with telling us what you just told us about racing, would you say that that pressure kind of clears your mind a little bit, and so you, like, when you're just riding a trail normally and you come up against something that might be a little, mentally or physically tough, you kind of go, ooh, I don't know. But when you got that pressure, it's like you say, it's like you don't have time, you don't have an option. That's where you're going, and you just do it. And maybe your muscle memory from riding before, or I don't know, like you, when I was riding in Narden, there's some really like tricky sections to that track. And I just, I personally found that you just get on with it, and you're just going with it. And after a while you warm up and you go, yeah, I got this. Like you're good.
Yeah.
And if it's gnarly, you just take your time and you bite little sections off of it. Like, okay, you pivot, turn over this and push the bike over that, and then you're done. You keep going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pivot turn, for instance, like you just brought up a really good point. I have videos on, my social media or YouTube with me for, 2 hours practicing on the same log. Do you need to do that? Probably. I would credit where I've got to in a short amount of time riding with that dedication to practice. But I mean, everybody here would be familiar. You watch IRC Tire Guy or somebody on YouTube, and he's talking about a double blip technique, and all of a sudden you're out on your bike trying to do it, and you're overthinking the crap out of it. Right. And you kind of like, it's like your session falls apart on you because you're trying to think like, well, no, he said pull the clutch in here and then give it some throttle here, and you got to bounce the front wheel off here and do all this stuff. So the practice builds the muscle memory, but then, that self-induced pressure, to be clear, because I'm not getting paid to race, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but that self-induced pressure and that competitiveness absolutely clears the mind, for sure. That's a good way to put it. And then, like I said, it's just something now on the trail that is stopping you from completing that lap, passing that guy, getting to the finish line. And it just like falls into place almost to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself taking on stuff that I would never have, or not never, but I would have thought twice about had I been on a leisure trail ride. There's one section where there's like this really gnarly outcrop, and there was like 2 or 3 ways up it. And there was some traffic up ahead on the easier sections. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep going to that far section because there's nobody there and I can just take my time. And yeah, I got over there and I was like, ooh, this was a mistake. And it's like, twice as high, twice as steep. And I'm like, shit. Yeah. And, there's a bunch of photographers on the top of the hill and they're like, ooh, we got a victim.
We need that footage.
Yeah,
we need that.
exactly.
And but I lined it up and caught my breath a little bit and just focused on it, and I got up okay. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but I got up okay, and the bike got up okay, and then just kept on going. And I was like, wow, man, it's just it's that pressure. It just focuses you a little bit, and if you don't think about it too much, you can get over some stuff that you'd be surprised about. Mm-hmm. That's what I found.
Yeah, and not to hog the airtime, but the other thing there is what you have to watch out for, because the flip side of that coin is I found getting through this season up until about Battle of the Prospectors, actually, I was becoming what I was calling a dirty rider. Where it was exactly that. So it was whatever I need to do to get through this section. Mm-hmm. If that was paddling feet or standing on my seat or, just sending it kind of, almost to the extent of being out of control, it was, get through it. And so towards the end of the season, I went back to like my technical skills a little bit and went out onto the single track local to me and, started focusing again on, being on the pegs and trying to build that good muscle memory. Because I did become a little bit, I called it a dirty rider. I'd be out riding with my friends taking race lines and they're like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So yeah, I got to watch it there too.
No, that's a good point. Some of the pictures we got back from Narden of myself, I was like, ooh, that didn't look as pretty as
that's
it felt.
Not proper body positioning. Yeah.
Right on. So what are some of the highlights and maybe some of the lowlights from this season for you guys?
I don't know. There's anytime I want a bike is a highlight, and I know that part of that question is lowlights. Like when I injured myself, I'm always injuring myself, but I did a pretty good one this year that required surgery on my knee. I don't consider that a lowlight. It sucked that I was injured and it was painful and everything, but at the same time, that second day of the Cord, as painful as it was to ride on I went down and hurt my knee really bad at the beginning of the second day, and and totally destroyed my bike by the end of the day. Rob saw it coming back. I had no levers, no brakes. I swear to God, I had no levers, no brakes.
Is this what we classify a dirty rider?
Well, at that point it was survival, getting that last. But anyway, to me, as much as I don't look back and think I wouldn't have raced the Cord if I knew that was going to happen, because it's all just part of the learning experience. And as long as I can still ride, I don't have any regrets. So highlights for me would be, well, to be honest, my biggest highlight would be seeing my son, both my sons race, and one of my sons won the whole XC series this year, which was a huge highlight for me, more so than anything I accomplished. And he still rubs it in my face.
Good for him.
Because I did well in the XC series, but he certainly rubs it in that he got first.
Good.
And then. Yeah, man, I don't have any lowlights. It's just nothing but pleasure for me. It's like I can't explain how much I look forward to getting out on a bike. I don't care. Even if I know that I'm going to break my bike in half and injure myself, I'm still going to go.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought the boys up, because to a certain extent I lived vicariously through Sean in that sense this year, where it was so cool to wake up at Sean's house in the morning and come upstairs, and your wife was fantastic, and she a couple times put together to go breakfasts for us and stuff like that, or she was coming to the races herself with both boys and Ernie in tow, and we would go there, and it was crazy because Sean wasn't helmet on fire type thing. He wasn't in a panic, but he was busy, right? Because you got to get there, you got to sign up, and the boys race first thing. The first kids on the track, really, other than, the youngest age. And there was more than one time where, I was helping out in the pits. I help fuel, one of the boys' bikes. One cool. time, and was just sitting there because I knew Sean couldn't handle it all, and just because of where he was, where the pits were, and how he was trying to signal I don't want to use their names. I don't know if you want me to use their names or not.
Yeah,
but,
sure. No,
but I mean, Kaz is out there and he's tearing it up. And Sean's over there to try and tell him, hey, you need to fuel this. And so I could see it. I could see it playing out in front of my eyes. Sean's over there. The fuel's over there. I'm like, oh my God. Like Kaz is going to make it to the fuel before him. Kaz is leading the race. Sean's going to have to run over. So I ran over and I grabbed the fuel and I had it and I was helping him. And then, there was a couple times he was on the start line and we had messed up his numbers. And you were like, oh, I forgot the tape. And I'm like, I'm on it. And I jump on his mountain bike and head back and grab it. So it was just super cool. That is cool. I got a little guy who's on a CRF 50 right now. So I'm really hoping, in a few years we're doing the same thing. But I digress. As far as highlights for me, the overall highlight is, and I got to do a little bit of a shout out to a certain extent because, there's people sitting around the table right now that have had a huge impact on my riding. And one other guy, the owner of Pete Sales and Service, Todd, and Jim and the whole staff there. And it's not to give a shout out to the business. It's actually to give a shout out from a very real perspective. Because I went in there and I was looking at a Honda CRF, the 450L, in 2019. It was at the end of the season. They had that and they had a Beta 390 in there. And it was the sales staff and it was those, it was Jim and it was Todd who were just like, hey man, maybe you want to take a look at the Beta and, it's all history from there.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, and I've had a great relationship with that shop moving forward. But, the very next guy, and, he's not on a mic right now, but younger, over on the couch.
Yeah, young.
Young. Like, Jay's the guy who brought me to Calabogie for the first time.
That's right, yeah.
So, Todd brought me out to the single track local to us, and I was mind blown, like, holy cow, you can do this stuff on a dirt bike. And then, a few weeks after that, Jay's calling me saying, we met through snow biking. That's a whole nother story because that was, it's actually weird how that all worked out. But, because I actually had more hours on a snow bike my first year than I did a dirt bike. But anyways, Jay gives me a call and says he's going to Calabogie. So I went to Calabogie, mind blown again, right? And then my first year riding, I didn't do any races, but I did OVR and I did Rockhound Rally. Those were like the two things I did. And, you guys were there that first year and it was in Barry's Bay and then it was mind blown again. And that's kind of how I would call it just a little over 2 years of riding now has kind of went. And then this year, same thing. Not really sure how we started talking. I think it was just through social media.
I think it was at Kawartha. It was the first time we met.
Met in person, but we were kind of talking before that somehow.
Kind of Instagram's cool like that. You just start chatting with all sorts of people, like even pros and everything, and all of a sudden it just starts a connection like, oh, well, let us know next time you're riding, and then you reach out and say, hey, we're heading up to here, and sure enough.
Yeah. And then it was, and then Sean is the guy who got me into racing. So like, this room and the dealership, and those people that I've become good friends with, Todd, the owner, was over at my house for a beer the other night. Like this is what it's about. But yeah, big thanks to everybody here because it's been, it's been a heck of a ride and it continues. That was the other one. So we did, Sean doesn't want to talk about OVR this year. So we'll,
well, the Sunday was a better day for me.
Let's talk about OVR.
But I was here. I rode one day in OVR this year, and unfortunately I couldn't do the other 2 days because of family commitment. But, OVR is always a great, and the trails here are amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it was awesome. And, I showed up that morning, and I think I actually ended up sweeping with you guys out.
Yep.
And then I rode back with Darren Rideout.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rode back with Darren and a couple of guys, and, they're super skilled. The one guy's doing stand-up wheelies for like 3 kilometers the whole way back.
Yeah.
But, no, it's great.
Yeah, we taught him how to do that.
Yeah.
It was all us.
No, that's a good point about, just to go back a little bit, about the Instagram connection. So that's one thing that I've always, say what you will about the platform, but I've always found really cool. Going back to the first OVR, the winter before that OVR, I had bought Lawrence Hacking's book, read it, and I can't remember how I came across his Instagram page. I don't know if it was like I searched it or maybe there was something in the book that had his hashtag or whatever his handle. But anyways, I ended up finding him on Instagram, and I sent him a little message. I said, hey man, just read your book, totally amazing, I love it. And the dude writes back like almost immediately, and he's like, oh great, and so kind of we were chit-chatting a little bit via Instagram, which I like, that was blowing my mind really. And then we started planning for the first OVR, and I kind of me, Jay, and Darren were sitting down, and I'm like, hey man, have you guys heard of Lawrence Hacking? I kind of hit him up on Instagram, and he's he replies like, I don't know if it sounds crazy, but maybe we should invite him to OVR. And they're like, oh, okay, you go ahead and do that. And so I did, and like, I think it was like not even 30 minutes. I got a reply back. Yeah, man, that sounds amazing. I'm going to bring a bunch of friends if that's okay. And we're like, what?
Yes, please.
What's going on right now? And, he showed up with all his buddies who turned out to be really, really great. And they've all come to like pretty much every single OVR since then. And it's been amazing.
You'll find most guys and girls who ride, like at heart, we're just dirt bikers that want to go out and have fun with anybody. Mm-hmm. And, and whether you're Lawrence Hacking or another pro or just someone who's starting, we're all after the same thing, and that's a good day in the woods. And you don't need, and I sometimes will get this, like, will people be like, oh, I don't want to come riding with your crew because you guys are all crazy and good, and but like, it doesn't have to be that way. Some of my best days by far are just messing around and not going fast and just laughing and having fun. And like, in fact, a lot of the days, like, I don't want to go fast. I just want to mess around and hit some rocks and here and there. Not every day needs to be on the throttle. That's what racing's for. And that's what's so cool is you can reach out to people and not feel intimidated. Like if anyone's listening to this thinking, oh, I'd love to go riding with someone or one of these guys at the table. Like I bet you any one of us would be like, where are we meeting tomorrow?
Yeah,
where's the pin? Drop me a pin, right?
Yep.
Well, that's a good point. I think both Jay and I, like we've ridden with a lot of different folks of a lot of different skill levels over the years. And I don't know, like there's a huge like that's one thing that I find is some folks might have a misconception about. It's like, oh, you're really good, so you're really fast. Well, maybe I'm just technical. Like
right.
Just because you're a good rider, you can get over some, like especially around here, like it's not quick. It's not quick riding. We have a very technical terrain here, and yeah, you can get through it quick if you want to push it. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can also just plod along and have a lot of fun. Like you don't have to ride it fast to have fun.
And have the fun showing people trails. Like there's no better feeling than being like, I got to show you this, man. This is so cool.
Oh yeah.
And taking new people out and blowing their mind. Like you were saying, getting taken to Calabogie, right? And experiencing that. Like there's no better feeling than watching someone enjoy that for the first time.
Yeah, and we get to do that twice a year. 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Really, with snow VR.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite bits is meeting new people, and we've met so many people, but also riding in the back and getting people through some of the trails and just showing them. I love that. That's my favorite bit for sure. Mm-hmm. Like we've worked hard on getting the trails the way they are and redeveloping trails and the wood ferries, how they are there, and thank God for them. But like showing off what we have here is great, and seeing people's reaction. Like sometimes they're
every year I love every year leading up to the OVR. It's like, oh, they got something new. Yeah, this one's called FML. It looks, and then the next year it's like, oh no, this one's bear bait. No, it's way worse than FML. No, it's telling you, and it's like every year, it's
it's hard. It's really hard. What is it? What's the saying? It's hard to make easy trails.
Yeah, so we love that the Nardin guys came up with that. It's hard to make it easy or something like that.
Yeah,
and it's a true altruism for sure. I mean, we've tried many times to make easy trails, and I'll be like, hey guys, I just cut this trail for the beginners or the novice crews. Like they're gonna love it, and then we'll go ride it, and like we'll get halfway through, and I look back and I'm like, so, and they're like, are you cracked, man?
Yeah,
there's nothing easy about
3
this.
people whose bikes are broken now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, OVR is definitely that has that aspect to it. When sweeping with you guys this year, if you remember, we came up on that couple just after the dam road. I don't know all the names of the trails. I mean, they were done. Yeah. Right, they were done. For some of us, it's exactly what we expect. Yeah. For some people, it's quite a bit more than what they expected for sure.
Yeah. But it's always something that, I mean, there's always exceptions. And people think, okay, that was too much for me. But even the people that I've come across that are just like on the verge of like death, when you see them the next morning, they're like, that was so awesome. Thanks for helping me out. And they're back again the following
Right.
year because they
absolutely.
realize that like that pushing themselves past their comfort zone and realizing I didn't even think I'd get 10 feet down this hill, let alone a kilometer.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings me to, so you guys have tried a couple legit hard enduros this year, which is, I mean, as you guys know, it's vastly different than an XC or an MX race or a regular enduro race for that matter. And, you know, I'm not trying to say that what we have here is hard enduro, but it's definitely getting there in some respects. Like, you know, me and Jay had this big long conversation on the drive back from Narden about, you know, they were basically comparing our tracks, what we ride on a normal basis, to what we experienced on that event, that race. And I think what it was although Narden had some really really tough sections, I think the difference is so take what Narden has and then spread it out over a very long distance, because I think what we have, like, what do we, like 100
Over 100, 120 almost.
yeah, 120K there and back of just awesome gnarly trails. And you know, you're not it's not like Narden where you come around a corner and there's like a 4-foot rock face and you got to figure out how you're going to get your bike over this, you know, off camber slimy wet rock. It's not like that, but there's enough of it over a long period of time where it just it does wear some folks down. And I think a lot of riders are used to riding like the Limericks, the Ganaraska Forest. That's where their bread and butter is, which is nothing wrong with that. They're awesome trails. They're super fun. But then they come out here and they're like, holy moly. But that's what we love. We love bringing that challenge to people. And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for people to get out of their comfort zone and experience some stuff that, because we had a good example of that was there was this crew that came for OVR this year, and they had a really sweet setup. They had these huge toy haulers. I think we talked about them on our last podcast. But they were a little bit out of their element. But they came to us like afterwards and pulled us aside and were talking to us like, "Hey man, we loved it. It was amazing." And I'm like, "Oh really? Like, you know, you guys look like shit like by the lunch stop." Like I felt really bad. And they're like, "No man, don't feel bad. It was awesome. We loved it." And I was like, "Okay man, like right on." Like that's the attitude. That's the way to go. And I love that. Like that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the terrain around here, in my opinion, is just as hard as any hard enduro that we've done. But there's a big difference when you're in a race for two main reasons. One is when you're racing, you've got that pressure of people behind you. You've got a huge thing is bikes falling in front of you up key lines. That's like everything.
Yeah.
You know, something like FML would be a disaster on a race. Like it would be like the hardest section that everyone would be, but that's it because bikes are falling everywhere, and you got to figure out not only is this hard, but you got to figure out a way to get up it now. And the other difference with you know a trail ride, not really trail ride, but you know what I'm saying, like OVR versus a race, is you don't get the option of taking out a hard section and going around it. It's ribboned. You're off course, right? So like a good example is, I don't remember the name of the section, but there was one about 3 sections in on OVR where there was a huge log. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And like some people were getting over it, a lot weren't. And but in a race, you don't get to go into the woods 40 feet and go around it and come back. Like that's cheating. You get disqualified. So like, and on top of that is you guys are designing this for an OVR ride where you're not trying to push pros to their limit. But if you wanted to here, there's no question you could make terrain from what I see out there that would push pros. I mean, you don't have the elevation that something like Battle of Prospectors does because it's just the terrain, but that doesn't mean you couldn't design something that would punish them just as much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the other thing you hit on there as well is you don't want it, I don't think, to be like that every foot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the nice things about coming here is the in-betweens.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, where it gets a little bit, I would dare say flowy, although I don't, not too much around here is flowy. But we're, you know, the trail just opens up enough that you can take a breather. You know, everybody stops and has a laugh after the last section. Like, that's part of OVR.
it is.
Right? And like, you don't get that at you know, a race like Arden. For instance, I mean, it was just.
Why don't you?
Oh, he's going again.
Why don't you?
He's going to hydrate.
He's thirsty.
He's going to
Is
hydrate.
this a China shop? Hey, we
Just
have
like
a personal
Smash.
assistant right here.
We're talking about hydration.
Yeah, exactly.
So for those just listening, Sean, all that noise was Sean bulldogging it from the beer
For
fridge.
another beer for a juicy ass.
That's okay. I didn't know what I was doing with the mic in the beginning, so I probably messed up some of the sound too. But no, I you know what? I dare say that, you know, listen, the reason I got invited to Narden, full stop, was because of my review I left on Battle of the Prospectors.
Right on.
That review on the way back in my truck on Facebook had, I don't know if it's at 4,000 hits right now, which is a lot for me. And within 15 minutes of that review, Ron from Arden I was in my truck. I wasn't even home yet. And he was hitting me up like, "Hey man, if you're looking for hard enduro, we got it." Almost, I wouldn't say insulted, but the way I kind of termed it there, I think I was on a high coming back from Arden. It was like, man, we don't have this in Ontario. But you know, when I think about it now, again, you forget the pain. What we're really talking about is it was just completely different.
Right.
You know, I was tired after Arden, the way I was tired
Yeah.
after a day at Battle of the Prospectors. I have been tired here. You guys have seen it. Well, OVR this year. Remember, I tried FML like 6 times to start
Yes.
the ride
Yeah.
and fell apart for
Yeah.
30 minutes after
That's your
that.
fault for trying it.
Oh, I
6
know.
times in a
I
row.
know.
I mean, it was
You were
completely
determined.
ridiculous.
You were
It was
determined.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it ruined the next 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't do anything on my bike. I really needed a breather and some
Not
Gatorade.
true. There's a lot of cursing. You did.
There was a lot of cursing.
Well.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I didn't put any of that in my video.
No.
I think OVR is the only thing I've done within 30 seconds. You get the biggest kick to the teeth you can imagine.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, if you want, it's not.
Yeah.
It's optional.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It is
If you want to
optional,
be a
but
hero, then
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hashtag no
so where's
warm-up.
the trail? Right here, and body slam.
I didn't believe it.
Right.
The first day I ever came here I was riding with Jay for sure, and I can't remember. John, I think you were with us, maybe my first ride ever here, and that's what I got.
Yeah.
Hey man, like warm up 30 seconds, you're into it, and I was just like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your bike's still on choke.
Oh yeah,
You
his
know?
bike's still on choke. I'd already torn a rear fender off.
Yeah.
You know, and it was no, actually, maybe it was with Justin. I mean, I met so many great people here, but anyway, yeah. I mean, the first ride was just, hey, come to Sunny Hill. We're a bunch of good dudes here. Let's go ride.
Isn't
And it
that
was
such a misleading thing? It's like, come to Sunny Hill and
I know.
ride OVR.
Yeah, exactly. The sun sets here.
I remember
Yeah.
the first time we did OVR, and like those who haven't done the whole thing, like you realize that the hardest section is right here on property. But we were at FML, and we are just all dying. Like the first time, like steam's coming out of my buddy's head. There's bikes tumbling down the hill. There's grown men crying, you know. And eventually we got to the top of it, and it's like an hour and a half into the day. And one guy's like, "We've done like 300 meters."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Not even
And
a
it's
kilometer.
like a 140 kilometer day.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I think we need to reevaluate this, boys.
Every one of my rides here, that happens. About an hour and a half in, I'll look over at Younger, who's always got a GPS because I never have one, and you'll go, so that was 9K, and you don't believe it. There's no way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think we just figured out the name of our next trail though. Body Slam.
body slam. Yeah, I like it.
I love it.
Yeah, I like
That's
it.
That's the next trail name.
Absolutely.
Body Slam.
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Cool. Yeah. No, we've had some fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, big time.
yeah.
And I think like when I look back on my year this year, I got pulled away from you guys a little bit to
Yeah.
go do all the racing and stuff like that. But every time I step foot kind of back here, it's like, oh yeah, this is
you'll be
where
back.
this is where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
So
Cool. Talking about your kids earlier, we were talking about your kids and the two different personalities and your son at Narden, and he was taking pictures. How cool. Like when you can get your kids involved in any way.
Yeah,
very cool.
insanely cool. As a matter of fact, little story, my two older boys that I have, we tried it. So I tried it. A few years ago, I bought myself a really old KTM 200, and I bought two little 50s for them. We gave it a go, completely unsuccessful. I didn't know what I was doing enough on it to be like doing that like father coaching thing with the two boys. So bit of a failure. We sold those, got rid of them a few years in between. But my boy who came to Narden, and I said that on my YouTube video, I just asked him, I said, come to the start, grab some footage, and then listen, man, if you're cold, go sit in the truck. And on my video, I left it there because I thought it was so cool. I came around and I was kind of like, Chris.
Yeah.
I just yelled because I wasn't expecting to see him in the woods. He had
And a
listened to the
ways in
bikes,
there.
a ways in
Yeah,
there.
good for him.
He had my phone. He ran the battery dead on it, just taking footage, and his fingers were in the way. And it was like, but I posted all that stuff too. So it was super cool. And my little 3-year-old is just, he's insane.
Yeah.
He's got a CRF 50 on training wheels. He's got it's like a 1500 watt ATV that he just redlines. It's a twist throttle too, and awesome. He's crazy. So
Good. Cool.
yeah. But my boy who came to Narden, we got home and he started looking at CRF 110s.
Nice.
So maybe one of those.
He
is
was
in
excited.
The future for
I
now.
could
Oh, big
see- I
time!
could
Yeah,
see
big
it in
time.
his eyes,
And
yeah.
Steph's husband came up and gave him an OFTR keychain
Right.
at the end of it too,
Yeah.
because they were hanging out in the woods together
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
trying to wait for Steph, who, killed it in her own way.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think there's anything, not that I know of anything, that has the power of passing on through generations as motorcycles do. Like I was talking to your dad today, Jason, and like you can just, everyone, if like they either their parents or dad rode, or they're the first to start what will be a 40 generation passing on of motorcycle tradition.
Yeah.
And it's just such a cool thing to be able to do because, whether your kids are 4 or whether they're 25 or whatever, or, you can always just enjoy that together. And yeah, it's really cool that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love having my kids ride with me. So I have 2 older boys, and they just got into it this last year. My older son, he just showed up with a bike. I had no idea he bought one. I'm like, yes,
That's awesome.
This is so good.
Yeah.
And then my younger son, he's right into it, and they're good in their own, like because they're brand new. They need some improvement, but they're good, and I'm very impressed. And then my 4-year-old daughter, who is into it. And
I love your story today about, and I think this is really good advice on how, or method of how to get your kid involved in riding. So, about how that happened.
Don't try to push it on them. So Camden, I bought her a 4-wheeler, little 54-wheeler for her first birthday. So it was maybe premature, but it was there.
Little ambitious.
A little bit, but it was there, and if she wanted to pick it up, she did. And so this summer she actually rode it quite a bit. And then I purchased a little 50cc dirt bike for her, a little Yamaha PW50. And she's always had it, and she sits on it. And I made some training wheels, and she wasn't really excited about the training wheels, and that's fine. And then it went for a month, and she didn't even look at it. And then one morning she woke up and just said, "Dad, I think I want to try my dirt bike today." Yep. Put my coffee down. We got all the gear on, and off we went. And she did amazing. I was very, very proud. And going back to you talking about my dad, and you met my dad today. My introduction to a motorcycle was him. He had a Honda Shadow of some sort, and we had a cottage in Covermere, which isn't far from here. And I was a young kid, and he said, "Do you want to come with me on the bike?" Yeah, right, awesome. So we found a helmet and stuck it on my head, and we're going down, and he's showing off on this one straight stretch, and doing whatever speed he's doing, and his helmet blows off his head. Obviously didn't tie it on very well.
That explains so much about your father.
Absolutely. So we spent 4 hours looking for his helmet, and because we didn't want to tell Mom.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
That was my introduction to motorcycling. So.
But I think that's exactly it. You have to let kids do it at their own pace. And as I was saying to you guys, I have twins, and one is super type A, has to win. If you're not first, you're last. And the other one couldn't care less. I'm on a dirt bike, and he just is having the greatest day. And whether he gets last or second last, he's still having probably a better time than the type A guy. And you just got to let kids do their own thing on how they get into it and progressing into it. Because I've seen that, and unfortunately I see this more at the track because I do track too, where, there's a lot of parents who are just so intense with their kids, and you can just tell they hate it, and they're going to stop it as soon as they can, and then you're going to miss out on that magic of having that for the rest of your life with your kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things we found this year, especially was there were more families coming out, or like couples at least, and that was really cool because normally it's like a dude thing, like a bunch of dudes come out, and which is awesome. We like that too, but it was really nice to see those couples come out, and we've had a couple family rides up here this summer as well, where the kids we had but I don't know, we had 5 or 6 kids on little 50 cc's and touring around, and we take them out on the trails, and it was a lot of fun. And I can't agree more that my daughter's the same way. It's I'm kind of like, okay, man, you got to get on this dirt bike. I bought it for you. We got to be wicked. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. And it's well, I think today I'm just going to, play with my Pokemon stuffies or something like that. And you're like, oh, okay. Then I was at one point, I'm like, you know what? It's just there.
Right.
It's there.
Right.
And then, one day she's like, hey, I want to go ride my dirt bike. And I'm like, giddy up. Let's go. Get the stuff on.
Yeah.
Let's go ride. And so we've hit Area 31 out in Ottawa there a couple times, and we get her out there, and I'm like, I get her bike started, and I get her gear on, and I'm like, hey, you gonna wait for me? And she's like, no.
Yeah,
she's off. She's peace out. I catch up with her, and I'm like, hey man, do you want to ride? She's like, no, I'm just doing my thing. And I'm like,
But
awesome.
that's great too, right?
Yeah,
like
love
that. What's the word I'm looking for here? That not requiring that dependence, that independence, where kids are just, my 3-year-old, I took him camping. I posted pictures on my social media. We just went out and found a place out in Crownland, close to where we live, and the second day, so we stayed overnight. So we were on bikes, and we're shooting the bows and stuff all the first day. And the second day, I wake up, and he wakes up, and he has some cereal by the fire, and then goes, Dad, I'm going to go on my dirt bike. And I was like, okay, get them all dressed. And next thing I know, they have this, they have a berm turn where it looks like, kids or guys go out and, they're riding this berm turn. So I told him it was the big boy turn. Well, he is smashing this thing with training wheels, like this berm turn, trying to lean into it. Right. And he's making it, and he's probably, 200, 300 feet away from me, and he does not care that I'm not there. He's not doing it to he doesn't want to look good for Dad. He's on his bike because he wants to be on his bike.
Yeah.
And he's way off, and the mist is coming up because it's so early, and I took a bunch of pictures and photos.
I remember that post. That was cool.
He just rocked it, man. Yeah, it was great.
And little dudes just sitting there munching on cereal and then going dirt biking.
And then going dirt biking.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, man. That's pretty sweet. So JY's in the hot seat with us. What's up, Jay?
What's up?
You gotta get a little closer to the mic.
First time in house.
Oh boy.
No leg cramp this time.
Yeah, that's so sweet. So
I think he'd be a perfect man to talk about kids.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, that's a good segue. So our family ride specialist is definitely Jay Young. I mean, he's a big promoter of that, big proponent for that with us. So I don't know, maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I got a 8-year-old, and 5-year-old, one on a TTR 110 and TTR 50, and they love doing I have a little kids loop out of here, and they just love doing it. They get they love the elevation, and I'll take them to other rides in other areas, and they'll be like, where's the hills? Or I'll bring other kids up here, and they're like, what's with all these hills?
Yeah.
What's this elevation? As to be used to the Limericks or the La Rose or any of those areas around Ottawa area, and then they come up here, and it's just
yeah, I mean,
mind blowing.
We took them out for that family ride we did with your boys, Lara and Ben and his sister Charlotte. We took them out to a local trail just not far from here. It's where the blue flags that we were talking about.
Oh yeah,
the double track that goes up there, and the hill climb up there it's not.
Well, you got to look at it through a kid's lens, not a adult dirt bike.
Well, I'm
lens.
thinking of even on an adult side of the fence, it's not a walk in the park in some sections,
right?
And we had to take our time with the kids. They weren't cleaning everything themselves or whatever, but they were doing a damn good job. I mean, even Lara, she's Jay's oldest, Connor, I mean, like he's a little bit of a maniac on a bike. Like he's like a fish in water when he's on his dirt bike, right? And Jack's just fearless. Like it's like he's a fucking tank, man. Like there's no stopping that kid. Yeah, point and shoot for sure. And Lara's like way more pragmatic than that. But you know, I was super impressed. Like I love it when you get the kids on the bike and they're just like, yeah, man, no factor. Let's do it. And you know, she's just like, I'm telling her like, hey, just stay on this side so you avoid that nasty stuff over there. And just, you know, if you need to put your feet down, put your feet down. And like, okay. And blah, 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 and they just plod along. And there was like a gnarly hill climb to get up there. And, you know, most adults, if they're dirt biking, they're going to gut it up there and just floor it to get up this, you know, it's loosey and it's loose and rocky and it's bit,
bunch
you know,
of baby heads.
Yeah. But the kids, you know, like Lara, like I'm like running in my motocross boots, like behind her. And I'm like, go, go, go. And she's just like, you know, like just plodding along, and she made it all the way up, and I was like, oh my God, that is amazing, man. Like every kid we had on there, like right up. Like they really did better than most of the adults we take up there.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was great, man.
And then they get the lookout at the end.
Yeah.
So they get like this sense of accomplishment. They get up there, they get their helmet off, they get a view. They all sit on the rocks, have their snack and water, and they're like, "Okay, let's do some more."
Yeah.
And you take them down the backside. It's about a 7-kilometer loop.
Holy cow.
And you know, they can do it in about, I think it takes a couple hours. And they all poke along and they do their thing. My kids have figured out the log hop. If they plant their feet and gun it, they get the front wheels up and over the logs. It's Area 31 has helped on the log hop situation. But no, I just like seeing the kids. Even I got some locals here at the campground now. And they've started camping here this year. I'm like, a couple girls, a couple of their neighbors. They hop on their bikes. We lend them bikes, and I'll take them over to that loop. They'll do it. And they get like, man, like, a lot of them come back and they're like, man, I think I want to get a bike. Yeah. Like, it just takes that good experience, and they're hooked, and they love it. And I just like that fact of the sport.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, I used to ride street before I got into dirt bikes. I mean, I used to ride dirt bikes when I was a kid. It was never my own. It was always like a cousin's dirt bike or the guy down the street at the cottage or whatever. But as an adult, you know, I got into street bikes, and that's what I rode mainly, and that's where I enjoyed time. But the community, although, you know, like, oh, you want to go for a ride? Yeah, let's go for a ride. The community was like, it's different in the dirt community. Like, the community is a lot tighter, I think. And I think it's, you know, I think it's through that adversity that you face when you're riding a dirt bike, whether you're like a super awesome pro or a beginner, everybody comes up against it on the trail at some point. They always hit their wall, no matter what. And it's that stupid fucking rock under the puddle that you don't see, or it's that gnarly off-camber, slimy rock that you think, you know, I'm going to Jarvis right up with that. And it's like, nope, not today, you're not. Or, you know, like a little too much throttle and you loop your bike out. And that's what I think that brings folks together. I mean, and that's one of the things that we loved about our OVR events was, yeah, okay, you go ride all day and you get your ass kicked, but then you come back and you talk about it. And it's like, oh man, today was wicked, or today was gnarly, or oh man, I got, you know, it's a lot of fun. And I that's what I love about this community is everybody seems to be totally fine with it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's just great. And
although the Iceman, Rob, I haven't seen him crash hard this year. Have you? No major injuries or anything?
No, not. I don't think. I mean, I think you're the man.
Of injury?
Well, not of injury. No,
well,
I wouldn't
say that.
My
hospital
you are
printout the other
you
day.
are the sendaholic of the group.
Yeah, you're totally
sure.
a sendaholic.
I mean, you are the sendaholic for
Yeah,
sure.
I agree.
I consider myself a beginner sendaholic in comparison to you, but and you know, I think back to our first ride in Kawartha. We went to the what are they called? The Stairs of Justice.
Yeah.
The Stairs of Justice.
The Stairs of Justice.
It really is.
No, they are.
Yeah.
And we were there, and it was the first ride of the season. No, when was that? Was that Kraken? Was that Kraken when I went up the
when you
first stair?
first went up, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So and it was only you and I, and I think there was
everyone had
there was only a couple of us left on the mountain.
Yeah, because it was pouring rain.
It was raining.
Yeah.
And like Sean, he can't say no. Sean can't. I mean, you saw them, You had said all day you probably were not going to try them, and people were saying like, "Ooh, it's going to be slick today." But the second we got there was no question. And I can't remember what was the pro's name. Brandon.
Yeah.
We're in the middle. Sean had medals made up, so everybody who made it to the top of greens got a gold medal, and it was a Kraken monster on this medal. So he's handing out these medals, and we can hear something come through the woods, and all of a sudden he's got to stop, and we turn around.
Yeah.
And what was his name again? Sorry,
Brandon. He comes flying over the top.
Over the top of the stairs of justice.
Yeah, like the last one. It just almost lands on us.
Yeah, and plants it.
Yeah.
Kills it.
That guy, I think he got third in the cord one year.
Yeah,
or maybe
amazing
he's
rider.
Crazy, yeah.
But the second he did it, I knew like this guy was just waited for people to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And we
Can't
were
let
down
that
there.
stand.
Yeah. And so he does it.
Staircase.
Oh no, big time. But he does it, but Brandon almost had to catch you at the top.
Yeah.
He stood his bike straight up to the point
He
where
made
it almost
zero effort to catch me.
Well,
I almost
a
went
good
back.
friend would have tried to catch you. I don't know. He stood
He
his
was
bike
laughing.
straight up in the air, and it started to go right, and it, you saved it. It was a great save, but and then I'm at the bottom, and I'm like, I'm gonna try. So I tried. I hit the first stair, messed my line up a little bit, but got up the first stair, and then I'm kind of staring up at it, and Sean's at the top, and he's looking down, and he's like, Rob, I don't know if it's worth it today. And I'm looking up at him, and I'm just kind of like, I really want to try this. But I think from that perspective, I don't know. There's something about your mentality on a dirt bike that is a little bit different, I think.
Some switch goes off at some point, and usually it's around the time someone else does something.
That's
and then
right.
I just go into monkey mode.
Yeah, and for me, I was just kind of like, no, you know what? I've had a great ride today. I made it up all kinds of stuff I wouldn't have thought to make it. We did the waterfall test that day. We did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I will say this though, like the cord this year, I think really taught me that you just take it down like half a notch, right? Like I have a problem of riding at 11, and it catches up to you real quick. And I got hurt bad at the cord this year, and thankfully I still finished the race. But I did take from that you know what, I don't actually have to ride that fast. Like I don't need to pin it every time, and if you just ride a little bit wiser, you can get through things. And so you learn a lot every year with every injury. Like that's how I look at injuries, and that's why I said there's no low point. I look at injuries and I always say, what did I learn from that injury? Like, how do I not do that again? I'm happy to go as fast or as hard, but how do I not injure myself next time, right?
yeah.
Don't hit trees.
Yeah, don't hit trees, don't stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it came to the cord, and I think it was in my video from the cord, I tried to have a narrative with it in that video. It was the first time I tried having a narrative along with just that, that point of view footage. And the one thing that I was saying there, along the same lines, although I think there's some context missing, is, to a certain extent, I was like, be careful about overclassing yourself for the challenge in a race scenario. So like when it comes to the Rockhound, or it comes to OVR, or it comes to some of those other events, like, I mean, if you're a half decent rider and you want to do a challenge, and you're not in a race scenario, and there's going to be sweep riders, and you're going to be with a group, and you want to try the gold line stuff, and it takes you much longer than everybody else to go and do it, that's great. But I found to a certain extent, it's it's not a counterpoint necessarily to anything we've spoken about today, but I think from a racing perspective, that's still my biggest piece of advice, is especially for beginner riders. Sean started, what class did you start in?
Novice B.
And that was only a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 18.
And he's riding Vet Expert now. But like he went into Novice B, did a few races, moved up, and I think you're in Vet Expert, you're ready to be in Vet Expert, you're competitive, certainly in Vet Expert, but you don't want to jump in and as a new rider and try to go intermediate B in the afternoon, or intermediate A in the afternoon necessarily, right? And there's something to be said for kind of taking a bit of a run at something, as opposed to kind of jumping in feet first. And I found that in racing, especially the morning classes. I'm actually looking forward to move to the afternoon classes, because the morning, and it's fine. But in the morning class, sometimes what you get is it's almost like they paid the money to come out for a ride, not a race, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes I found there was an expectation in the morning classes like, well, I'm stuck, you should be helping me. It's like, well, we're in a race. This isn't the Rockhound Rally. You know, like if you're stuck in the Rockhound Rally when I come around a corner and you can't get over a log, I'm going to stop my bike and help you get over the log. But in a race, unless you're lying on the ground hurt, you know, sorry, you're on your own because this is a race. And that was a mentality I couldn't break in the races. And it came out in Narden again, right? So, of course...
I mean, it's just natural, right? You're there to race. You're not there to... It's not a trail ride,
Yeah.
as you pointed out. It's
Yeah.
like and, I mean, when we showed up, as I said before, we weren't really there to compete, so we were okay with stopping to help people, and that's kind of what we do anyways, right? But
you guys weren't overclass, though. That's the big difference. Like, you were there to ride silver, and you're all capable of riding silver. That's different because, you know, for Narden, you know, almost unfortunately, like, it would have been great to have you guys, like, you know, right on my tail or ahead of me, you know, as opposed to taking it.
next year we're not going to help anybody. And
Yeah,
we're gonna
like,
ride on your ass.
but like
give it to you, buddy.
that's part of it, right? Like, you know, I was going and I was looking, you know, Jay Younger was in front of me for a little bit, and you know, we got all piled up at that first one, but you know, you have a client base and all that stuff, and so anyways, but that's an aspect of racing. But I just for me, it comes full circle, and the reason why I brought it up was mostly just because, you know, I've learned this year lessons about overclassing myself, and I've learned this year lessons about, like, no, you know what? At the end of a day, you're staring that, like, one last thing in the face. It's something you've never tried before. Maybe it's a little bit outside your skill level. There's no shame in, like, turning around and saying, like, you know what? Next month I'll come back and I'll give that a go. And I said I was going to try the Stairs of Justice. I just never made it down to Kawartha Lake since. That was a goal of mine, was to give it a go this year, but I'll hit it next year.
Oh, for sure you will.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I'll hit it next year, and I'm going to, you know, anything that I missed this year, I'll do next year. And we came away from that Kraken ride, and it was an amazing experience, and my bike was in one piece, and I was in one piece, and Battle of the Prospectors was the same. You know, I did one lap on race day, and when I met Chris at the finish line, it was like, yeah, I can go back in because I'm under time, but I'm happy with what I've accomplished so far. You know, my bike's still running. I'm still okay.
Well, I think that's really good advice for someone who's looking to maybe get into racing or dabble into it for the first time is, you know, don't class yourself too high, and, you know, take your time. Like, you know, you don't have to be, like, you're not going to be the pro. You're not going to be the winner right away. Maybe you will be. Who knows? Maybe you're an amazing rider and you just haven't, you know, discovered your true nature yet. But
you can move up.
But
it's
you can
much
move up.
harder to move down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
I'll add one point to that, though. I think everything Rob says is absolutely right. Don't overclass yourself. But it's like the saying, you know, the 7 friends that you surround yourself is who you're going to become. And and whether it's your rider group or whether it's your race class, when I jumped up to the afternoon class this year, the insanity becomes the norm.
Yep.
You know, and that pace is insane. But then it's like, okay.
It normalizes after a while.
It normalizes, and you're like, well, I'm not going to come in last. Meanwhile, last would, you know, be great in another class.
Yep.
And so you start to realize that, like, okay, well, you know, we were talking about this earlier. When you see great riders in front of you with the lines, now you know, you're like, okay, my bike can do that. I can see that I can do this, and that type of speed, you surprise yourself. Like, you know, if you finish classes and then you'll look back at some of the times in the morning class, and you're like, whoa, we were going way faster. And you know, it feels fast, but it's not like you would never have done that if you were in the morning class, because you're just kind of like, and to Rob's point about, you know, people who are coming in to race, like, definitely if you want to come in to race and your objective is to just have a good time and maybe a little bit competitive, then that's just class yourself accordingly. And everyone has a different perspective, right? Like, for me, hitting the podium is not as important as being better than I was the last time I raced. And if being better the last time I raced means racing against people that are faster than me, then that's the option I'll take. I'd rather finish last and ride faster than finish first and ride slower. So, it's striking that balance. But I mean, you really just have to ask yourself too, like, what's your goal? And the nice thing about racing, especially in the Ontario scene, is you can achieve that goal no matter what. If you just want to go out for a ride, you know what? There's a class for that. If you want to go out and try and become a pro, then yeah, there's a trajectory for that as well. But, it's going to come with a lot more injuries, unfortunately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying about riding with people who are kind of like, a little bit better than you, or maybe even a lot better than you. I mean, I've when I started riding with Darren pretty early on, and I was, I couldn't hold a candle to Darren, not even close. And but we would go on trail rides and we would all have a lot of fun. And riding with him, because he's such a technically skilled rider, you kind of, it makes you more confident and makes you, and he's a good dude. And then, I went out and did some training courses and kind of got my head around, okay, this is actually how you ride a motorcycle, and at least off road. And then so, we started riding again, and all of a sudden, I'm a little bit closer to Darren. And but he was really great in that respect, where he, and then we would ride with other dudes. And I mean, Jason Milne is a good example too. Like he's not a slow dude. He's quick. And I would say when we first started riding together, technically I might have been a more skilled rider, but the dude can set down a pace, and you better be paying attention if you're going to keep close to him. When Jay leads, it's quick. Like, it's really quick.
Super smooth.
Yeah, man. We I think it was not this past season. I think it was maybe on one of our low-key events or something like that. We were riding with Rome Haloftis.
Oh, yeah, he's a great rider.
And, we had a bunch of dudes with us. And we were on the far side of the lake, getting close to Lake St. Peter. And I'm like, do you want to lead for a bit? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so we got out, and it was double track, but it wasn't like smooth, easy double track. And Jace drops the hammer and he's gone. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. So I'm like, dropping down a gear, like keeping up to him. Like, I just trying to keep him in sight, right? Like, and there was a couple times where it got a little squirrely, pushing that envelope. But that's what I love. It's good. It makes you a better rider to do that. When you come out of the other side, it's you're like, okay, well, I can survive that now. And now the bar's been raised a little bit, so I'm more comfortable doing stuff. And I kind of hope that when we take people out, they see that as well. It's like we take them through some stuff that's challenging. It's a little bit out of their comfort zone, but then they get through it and they go, oh yeah, I can ride that stuff. It's not impossible. I can do that.
Yeah.
I found that riding after up here. You ride up here for so long, and then you go to other events like Nardian or Calabogie, and you get on the tough trail there, and you're like, yeah, getting used to the hard stuff. Like, you just ride it now, where you used to sit at the bottom and think about it. And now it's just like, it's just second nature now after riding up here. And that's what I like about up here. Brings your riding up to another level.
Yeah, we on our when me and Jay Milne did Dacre in 2018, that year it went through Calabogie. So we had a really rough start to our day, but we rode like devils, and we made time. Like, we made a really good time. By the first checkpoint, we had caught up with everybody basically, and unfortunately, Jay's Husqvarna at the time, not the current generation, the BMW generation, it wasn't doing so hot. It didn't like being punished through single track in Calabogie. And it systematically decided to self-destruct, and we battled hard all day, and I think at the 13-hour mark we got to Deliverance, which is a famous trail in Calabogie, and we're kind of like I think we made it worse in our heads than it actually was. And we're like, oh God, fuck, Deliverance is coming up. Oh shit. And then Jay's clutch started acting up, and we're like, oh my God. Anyways, long story short, the bike blew up and we had to leave it in the woods. And we got out of there. No worries. But then I think it's like either later that season or the next season early, we went back and rode Deliverance, the two of us. And, since then we had done a lot of time on the trails here. And we got in there and we're like, yeah, it's a technical trail.
Not that bad.
But, we cleaned it, no problem, and it was good. It was a lot of fun. There's like I'm not saying it's not a hard trail. You do it one way, it's a bit more of a kick in the face than the other.
It's hard
But-
on a 1090.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dark.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting, you know, like riding hard stuff all the time, regardless of where it is. I mean, I think doing it the hard way on the regular, it just makes you a better rider.
Yeah.
Like it's awesome.